The morning sun streamed through the tall glass windows of the CEO's sprawling mansion, casting light over a room that looked more like a corporate boardroom than a family home. Marble floors reflected his hurried footsteps as Daniel Hayes, one of the city's most respected CEOs, flipped through documents on his tablet. His life revolved around deals, deadlines, and market shifts, but today, something else weighed heavily on him. His 10-year-old daughter, Lily, sat quietly in a corner of the massive living room, fiddling with the piano keys without playing a single note. Her mother had died 2 years ago, and though Daniel provided every material comfort imaginable, he knew he could never fill that absence. He had ordered his assistant to hire the best music tutor available, hoping to draw Lily out of her shell. "Find me someone with an Ivy League background, a music degree, and at least 10 years of teaching experience," he had demanded. But when the doorbell chimed that morning, what awaited him was not the polished professional he envisioned. On the doorstep stood a woman in her early 30s, wearing a simple cardigan and a second-hand shoulder bag. Her hands clutched a folder, and her warm smile seemed out of place against the mansion's intimidating gates. "Good morning, I'm Emma Collins," she said softly, her voice laced with nervousness but also kindness. Daniel frowned. Something didn't add up. "You're the music tutor?" he asked, scanning her from head to toe. "Yes, sir. I was told to come today for Lily's first lesson." She adjusted her bag, slightly flustered under his intense gaze. His first instinct was to call his assistant and demand an explanation. This woman looked nothing like the elite instructor he imagined. But before he could speak, Lily peeked around the corner. Her small eyes widened, not with dread, as she usually greeted tutors, but with cautious curiosity. "Hi," Emma said warmly, kneeling down so she was at Lily's eye level. "You must be Lily. I'm excited to play music with you." For the first time in months, Daniel saw his daughter's lips curve into the tiniest smile. She didn't run away, didn't hide behind the piano, didn't roll her eyes like before. Instead, she stepped closer, intrigued. Daniel crossed his arms. He didn't like mistakes. His life was built on precision. But as he watched his daughter willingly sit beside Emma at the piano, something made him hold his tongue. Emma didn't launch into scales or strict drills. She began with a story. "Did you know the piano is like a friend? It listens to your feelings. When you're happy, it laughs. When you're sad, it sighs. And when you miss someone, it keeps you company." Daniel's chest tightened. He glanced at Lily, whose fingers gently touched the keys as if testing the truth of Emma's words. For months, no tutor had managed to reach her heart. Yet here she was, responding to this stranger's simple kindness. From the back of the room, Daniel observed. Emma's methods were unconventional. She asked Lily to play the sounds of raindrops, of laughter, even of missing her mom. Lily, shy but curious, pressed the keys, producing hesitant but genuine notes. Emma nodded with encouragement, her presence gentle but steady, as though she instinctively understood how fragile Lily's emotions were. Hours later, when the lesson ended, Daniel expected Lily to retreat as usual. Instead, she surprised him. "Can she come back tomorrow, Dad?" Daniel looked at Emma, still unsure. She wasn't who he asked for. She wasn't who he planned. But in his daughter's pleading eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years: hope. As Emma packed her things, she thanked him politely. "I'll do my best for Lily. She has so much music inside her, it just needs a safe place to come out." Daniel didn't reply immediately. His logical mind screamed that this was a mistake, an accident, something to be corrected. Yet as he watched Lily hug Emma goodbye, he realized maybe mistakes weren't always wrong. Sometimes, they were beginnings. And so, against his usual judgment, Daniel let the wrong music teacher stay, unaware that this decision would not only change his daughter's life but his own. The mansion began to change. For years, Daniel Hayes's house had been silent, filled with the ticking of clocks, the hum of electronics, and the sterile chill of wealth. His daughter, Lily, rarely laughed. Even when she sat at the grand piano in the living room, her fingers would hover over the keys without purpose. But in the weeks since Emma Collins had arrived, something remarkable had started to unfold. Music returned, soft at first, then louder. Piano keys tinkled in the mornings, laughter spilled across the hallways, and Daniel often found himself pausing at the doorway, drawn to the sound of life that he hadn't realized was missing. Emma had a way of teaching that defied any rulebook. Instead of beginning with scales and sheet music, she taught Lily through emotions, stories, and imagination. "Play me the sound of sunshine," she would say. Or, Show me how rain feels when it hits your window at night. Lily responded in a way she never had before, her little fingers dancing across the piano as though painting pictures through music. One afternoon, Daniel lingered in the doorway longer than usual. Emma sat beside Lily on the bench, her voice calm and encouraging. That's beautiful, Lily. Do you hear how the notes sound softer when you press gently? That's like whispering a secret. Lily giggled, trying again, whispering with the keys. For the first time, Daniel saw his daughter's eyes light up, not with forced politeness, but with genuine joy. His heart twisted at the sight. He had given her everything, expensive tutors, rare instruments, the best schools, but nothing had reached her the way Emma's warmth did. Later that evening, as Emma packed up, Daniel finally spoke more than the curt, professional phrases he usually used. You're not like the other tutors, he said, almost accusingly. Emma froze, unsure if that was praise or criticism. I know I don't have the same background as the teachers you probably wanted. I try to teach with heart. Her honesty caught him off guard. CEOs weren't used to people speaking so openly without dressing their words. He studied her for a moment, then asked quietly, why do you do this? Teaching, I mean, you could have chosen something else. Emma hesitated, then smiled faintly. Because music saved me once. And maybe, it can save others too. She didn't elaborate, but something in her eyes told him there was a story buried behind her words. Over the following weeks, Daniel discovered more about her. Emma wasn't just a teacher, she was a single mother raising a little boy named Noah. She lived in a modest apartment across town, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Every evening, after Lily's lesson, she would rush home to tuck her son into bed. One evening, Lily asked, Dad, can Noah come over? Emma says he likes music too. The request startled Daniel. He had been so protective of Lily, guarding her world like a fortress. But there was something disarming about Emma's sincerity. Against his usual instincts, he agreed. When Noah arrived, a cheerful 6-year-old with mismatched sneakers and an easy grin, Lily's laughter filled the mansion in a way Daniel had never heard before. The two children sat at the piano, giggling as they banged out silly tunes together, while Emma looked on with quiet pride. Daniel found himself drawn to Emma in those moments. Not in the superficial way he'd once been attracted to women at galas or business dinners, but in the way she carried herself, with resilience, humility, and a warmth that softened everyone around her. She wasn't intimidated by his wealth or status, she was focused entirely on the children, on making them feel seen and loved. Slowly, Daniel's own walls began to crack. One night, after the children had fallen asleep on the couch, he found Emma in the kitchen cleaning up dishes she hadn't been asked to touch. You don't have to do that, he said, leaning against the counter. She glanced up, smiling faintly. Old habit. When you're a single mom, you get used to doing everything. There was no bitterness in her tone, just quiet strength. Daniel felt a pang of admiration. He had boardrooms full of people at his command, yet here was a woman who carried the weight of her world alone, with no recognition, no applause, and still smiled at the end of the day. Doesn't it get exhausting? He asked before he could stop himself. Emma paused, setting down a dish. Of course, but when Noah smiles, or when Lily laughs during a lesson, it's worth it. Her words lingered in the air, soft but powerful. Daniel realized how different they were. He measured success in numbers, contracts, and deals. Emma measured success in moments, in laughter, in healing. As days turned into weeks, his routine began to shift. Meetings no longer consumed every waking hour. He found himself coming home earlier, sometimes even canceling dinner appointments, just to hear Lily play for him. Emma encouraged Lily to perform little concerts in the living room, where Daniel would sit in the front row, clapping louder than anyone. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed being part of his daughter's world until Emma drew him back into it. One evening, after Lily's small performance, Daniel caught himself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in years. Emma's eyes met his across the room, and for a brief moment, there was no CEO, no tutor, no status. Just two parents watching children discover joy. In the quiet that followed, Daniel realized something he hadn't dared to admit before. The wrong music teacher wasn't a mistake at all. She was teaching not only Lily, but him, how to live again. And though he didn't yet say it aloud, a part of him began to wonder if fate had sent Emma not just to help his daughter, but to heal his family. The autumn evening was quiet, the sky outside painted in dusky shades of orange and violet. Daniel Hayes sat in his study, documents sprawled across the oak desk. Numbers danced across the screen of his laptop, but his mind refused to focus. Instead, his ears strained for the faint melody echoing from the living room. It was Lily, playing the piano again. He recognized the tune. It wasn't a song he knew from any music book, but something she had been working on with Emma. A melody that sounded like hope, like healing. With a sigh, Daniel rose from his chair and walked toward the music. When he entered the room, he paused at the sight before him. Emma sat beside Lily, guiding her gently as the girl played, whispering encouragement. But what struck Daniel wasn't the lesson itself. It was the way Lily leaned against Emma, trusting her, laughing when she missed a note. His daughter, who had been locked away in grief for so long, looked alive again. Something tugged at Daniel's heart. But alongside it came a troubling thought. Emma wasn't the person he had intended to hire. She was here because of a mistake. He had asked for a professional tutor with impeccable credentials. Emma didn't have that. He had assumed she did, until a conversation earlier in the week had made him suspicious. Tonight, curiosity, and a nagging sense of responsibility drove him to check. After Lily went to bed, Daniel asked Emma to stay a little longer. She looked surprised but nodded. In the kitchen, he placed a printed document on the counter. It was a resume, one that belonged to the woman he had originally meant to hire. Emma's eyes flickered over it, then to him. She understood instantly. You weren't supposed to be here, were you? Daniel's tone was steady but searching. Emma lowered her gaze, her hands twisting nervously. No, I wasn't. I'm sorry. He felt a pang of betrayal, but not in the way he expected. Then why didn't you say anything? Her voice trembled but carried honesty. Because I needed the job. And because I thought maybe I could help Lily. I know I'm not what you asked for. I don't have a degree from Juilliard or some fancy conservatory. But I've lived a life full of music and pain, and sometimes, that teaches you more than a classroom ever could. Daniel studied her, torn between the CEO in him that demanded truth and precision, and the father in him that couldn't deny what he had seen. You lied to me. Emma shook her head quickly. I never lied. I just never corrected the mistake. And I was afraid if I did, you'd send me away before I had the chance to prove myself. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Please believe me, I only wanted to help. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Daniel turned toward the living room, where Lily's sheet music was still scattered across the piano. His daughter had changed so much in these weeks, laughing, smiling, finding pieces of herself again. All because of Emma. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. Do you know how many experts I've hired for her? Tutors with perfect credentials, and none of them reached her. Not one. You did. Emma blinked, startled. I didn't do anything special. I just listened. Maybe that's what she needed. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The weight of his own mistakes, choosing status over sincerity, results over relationships, pressed on him. For years, he had believed money could solve anything. But his daughter hadn't needed the best resume. She had needed someone with heart. He looked at Emma differently now, not as an accidental hire, not as a mistake, but as someone who had walked into their lives at exactly the right time. That night, as Emma prepared to leave, Lily appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Emma, she whispered, will you be here tomorrow? Emma knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. Of course, sweetheart, I'll always come back as long as your dad wants me to. But before Lily could respond, she turned to her father. Dad, can she stay forever? The innocence in her question struck Daniel like lightning. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His daughter's eyes held both hope and fear, as though she was afraid of losing the one person who had made her smile again. Emma froze too, her face softening at the child's words. She tried to deflect with a gentle laugh. Forever is a very long time, Lily. But Daniel's gaze remained fixed on Emma. The answer formed in his chest long before he found the courage to voice it. The following week, something extraordinary happened. Instead of just lessons, Emma began spending more time with them, family dinners, afternoons at the park with both children, evenings filled with music and laughter. Slowly, their lives intertwined. Noah and Lily became inseparable, and Daniel found himself sharing stories he hadn't spoken of in years. One night, after the children had gone to bed, Daniel walked Emma to the door. The air was cool, the stars shimmering above them. He hesitated, then said softly, "You were never a mistake. You were the best accident that ever Happened to us. Emma's breath caught. She looked at him, her eyes wide, her heart racing at the sincerity in his tone. For the first time since her husband had left her years ago, she felt truly seen, not as a struggling single mom, not as someone who wasn't qualified enough, but as a woman who mattered. In that moment, the walls between them crumbled. Daniel wasn't just a CEO. He was a father, a man learning how to love again. And Emma wasn't just a music teacher. She was the missing note in the song his family had been trying to play all along. As they stood in the doorway, silence thick with emotion, Daniel reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The future was uncertain, but one truth was clear: Emma hadn't just taught Lily to find her music again. She had taught them both how to find family. And this time, Daniel wasn't going to let the music stop.